Hello and welcome to the Fellowship Feed. Today I have a special guest, Charles Goodnight. Charles is an elder at our congregation here, and he has a lot of experience in the topic we're going to be talking about tonight, which is grief. He's worked in hospice, and as an elder, he's obviously dealt with a lot of different congregational things. So without further ado, let's jump into it. And
Let's do it.
So the idea of grief, go ahead.
It's great. It's great. Let me add one thing really quickly. Every month, on the second Saturday of every month, we have a grief support system, a grief support group that meets just to talk about what grief means, how they're dealing with grief, all different aspects. We let everybody tell their story. There's no judgment involved. I think it's well worth the time for people. If they need to come, they're more than welcome. Anybody is welcome.
Definitely.
Let me begin, Sean, by just saying there's so many, different kinds of grief, but grief affects everybody in a different way. It is really amazing. I think it depends a lot on the kind of loss it is. For example, we may lose a pet that we've had for many, many years, and I've got stories to tell about that. And it may be a job that all of a sudden you weren't expecting it. You've been in the job for 25 years, and the boss walks in and says, we don't need you anymore. And you were blown away. You didn't know what to do. It could be the loss of friends. It could be a loss of financial stability, a big loss. Back years ago, I can't remember the name of the company. Oh, it was the Enron company in Houston. And they went belly up like almost overnight. And we had members of our church that lost everything that they had, their retirement, everything. And it was devastating to them. It could be that. What do you do when that kind of thing happens? A loss of a dream or a goal that you had, loss of good health. One day you're in great health. One day you feel wonderful. One day you have a stroke or a heart attack, or you break a leg or something. It is just totally mind-boggling as how we treat that and how we deal with that. Sometimes even losing your youth. And that sounds kind of funny, but, some people 50 years of age look back and says, I used to be able to do that. Why can't I do that anymore? Because of age, primarily. So it's a real bad situation. It depends on how you deal with it. It depends on the kind of grief. Let me also say that it could be something that is sudden, like the sudden loss of a friend. I read just a while ago on Facebook about a very close friend that found out that one of their church members had lost a mother and a daughter in a car accident just today. Totally unexpected, very sudden, unexpected, which happens sometimes in drug-related deaths. Maybe you have the full knowledge that someone is going to die. You've been talking about it. You kind of know it's going to happen, but the person dies anyway. It's still a loss, no matter what you say. Maybe also something that is far distant, like somebody who lives a long ways off, and you know them, you've been close to them, but you find out through our wonderful technology, social norms, that you find out they died, and it breaks your heart, and you want to know, what do you do? How do you overcome that? And there's so many things and ways on how to deal with that. And I just want to talk for a minute about how you do deal with that. Everybody that writes a book, and there have been thousands of books written probably. I don't know if I've read that many, but pretty close. It seems like on how to deal with death, how to deal with loss, how to deal with any kind of loss. And what I'm going to tell you probably deals with any kind of loss you have, whether it's a job or a pet or a grandparent or a parent or a spouse or whatever. I think one of the first things is you've got to practice self-care. When somebody has lost something, you've got to remember that God wants you to keep your body healthy. Take care of yourself. You've got to do that. You've got to spend time. And it takes a lot of prayer, it takes a lot of effort, but got to eat right, you got to exercise, you got to get out, and that's hard to do. But in doing that, you have to acknowledge your loss. It's okay to say, I lost that job. I just lost it. No explanation needed except the fact that you did, or the pet, or whatever. A thing I really, really believe on and believe in is telling other people. Now, be careful, because I think you need to tell people that you trust. I wouldn't necessarily put it out on Facebook, although a lot of people do that. Facebook becomes reaching everybody.
Echo chamber.
Yeah, it really does. It's amazing. But find somebody you trust, maybe just one person that you can talk to, that will listen to you, that won't judge you, that will make every bit of difference for you if you tell them how you're feeling and about your loss. And the other thing, a big thing that I've learned over the years, and I'm sure most people have, is that prayer is so vital. Prayer is so important in times of loss, no matter what you've lost, no matter if it is a pet. When we started our grief support group here, we call it Redeeming the Tears. But here at Baker Heights, we've had a myriad of situations come up, but I never will forget when we first started, a loss of a pet seemed to be the biggest loss that we talked about, because so many had lost pets.
Sure.
And it's a real loss. Sometimes we look at it kind of, oh, well, big deal. Just go buy another dog at the place, You just go down and find something. But it's not that way. If they're a part of your family and you lose them, it's real grief. And so find that trusted friend and talk about it and lean on people, lean on Jesus, lean on the Lord, and pray a lot. Just pray a lot. Now, even in the midst of all of that, wonderful, wonderful people come up and they give you all of these great ideas on how to overcome grief. Great ideas. Like, just give it time, it'll be gone. One person wrote, mourning should be kept brief. Now, number one, define brief for me. That is really important. Is brief a day? Is brief a year? I'm very mindful of, in Bible times, they would go a week or longer mourning for somebody who was lost.
Actively mourning too, not just like
Yeah.
passively, but yeah.
It's not passive, very active.
Yeah.
Very active. A lot of crying, it's okay to do that. So debunk that myth. It's not real. It doesn't need to be kept brief. Now, for some people, it may be.
Sure.
Depends on you. Depends on where you are. Let me also say, in our world today, part of the problem we have is with drugs and alcohol, because they can suppress grief feelings. They can really seem to make you feel better in times of grief. But the problem is, when the drugs wear off and the alcohol wears off, the feelings are still there. Drugs and alcohol are not the answer to dealing with grief. They're just not. Some people say that mourning for loss is an illness. If it goes on for very long, it's just an illness. Like, take 2 aspirin, go to bed, it'll be over with. That's not true. No way. No way. And that goes along with what we hear a lot today. And I even heard somebody say this the other day on a reputable source. Give it time. Grief will be over in time. It doesn't take long. Just be patient. There are time limits, so don't worry about it. And you just want to reach across the TV screen and slap that person. I do anyway. Because I'm telling you,
sometimes he does.
There is no time limit to grief. You're going to grieve the rest of your life. You're sitting there and you're watching TV and you see a brand of perfume that your grandmother used, and all of a sudden you remember your grandmother. And maybe some sad feelings come up. Maybe they don't come up, but you remember. There's so many things. It can be a smell. It can be a statement you hear, a story you hear. It can be any number of things that bring to mind the loss that you've experienced. Maybe a dog that looks just like the dog you lost. It could be that. It could be your job that you found out later was given to somebody you really didn't like, and it really makes you mad, and you get really ticked. But it's amazing how our body works, how our mind works, how emotions work. It just really, really, really messes with us sometimes. So just remember that it takes time. One of the things that Sean, that I deal with a lot, that I really, really have encouraged people to read, because I am a minister, I'm an elder, and having been in hospice for so long, is the Bible offers such a tremendous source of strength and guidance in times of grief. For example, everybody knows the 23rd Psalm. I've encouraged people to read it 3 times a day or 5 times a day for 6 weeks if they need to, every day, because the words of it really jump out at you and they begin to make a difference. Think about it. The Lord is my shepherd. I shall not want. Not just good words, by the way, to read at a funeral, but to live for and live by each day of your life. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He makes me to lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside the quiet waters. He restores my soul. He leads me in paths of righteousness for his name's sake. And even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, or the deepest dark valley, it doesn't matter what it is, but even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil. I'm not going to be afraid. I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. God is with me. Thou art with me. I don't know if we believe that or not, but we should. That no matter what we travel through, no matter what our difficulties are, God is there. I remember what Paul wrote in Romans 8:28. Paul the Apostle made it very clear that in all things God works for good to them that love him. God will make it work out. God will lead us. God will help us. God will be our leader and our tremendous, tremendous victor through all of this. It doesn't mean we're going to feel like 100%, right now, but it does mean that we can make it through these difficult times. Grief is a tough one. Bereavement's tough. It's not going to be overnight, but it will be reachable. It can be doable, and we can make it because we lean on the power of God through that.
Amen. And one
Sound
thing
good?
with that Romans 8 that I always try to remember is that, it says that it works for his good in the sense that it may not even be good for us. It may be good for somebody else.
It may be
But
good
it
for
is
somebody else.
that kind of ultimate good. So sometimes people take that passage and make it sound as though it's saying, if you just, trust in him, everything's going to be great for you.
Almost selfish. Yeah.
Unfortunately, that's not really what it means, but it's better than that, really, when
Sure.
you think about it. It's more
So
grand
much better.
than that, yeah. One of the things, so much of what you've been talking about is literally the experience that I've had. I think we've talked about this before, but I had a friend of 30-plus years, closest friend I've ever had. I'd say he's more than a friend. He's family. I mean, this guy was with me throughout my entire life, ups and downs, left and right, you name it. And he died suddenly in a car crash a few years ago. And that shook me more than any family member that's ever passed away. I mean, he was so close to me that I was just like, to this day, I sometimes can't believe it. I think about it, and I almost forget that he's gone. And I think, oh, yeah, he's gone. And it's like, I'm still haven't processed it fully yet. It's insane. But it's caused me a lot of grief and a lot of dwelling sometimes on sometimes good memories, but also just the fact that he's gone. But one passage that I try to keep in mind is Philippians 4:8, and it says, finally, brothers and sisters, whatever is true, whatever is noble, whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is admirable, if anything is excellent or praiseworthy, think about such things. And I try to think of that passage in just a general sense to force myself to not dwell in a negative way, but usually my thoughts will turn to, well, the fact that he had a beautiful wife and 2 beautiful children, and they're still here. And I like to think of that as he's kind of still part of them, and therefore we are still very close. My wife and I will go travel to New Hampshire now and then, and we always make sure we visit them. And it's just like that's, seeing his kids is incredible because they look just like him. And it's like, there's still a part of him left. Anyway, my point is just I try to focus on those positive aspects, the good that he brought to the world, the amazing influence he had on me as a person. And by doing that, I try to focus on those things, and maybe it's minutes, maybe it's a half an hour, whatever. And then I did my thing, and then I move on. But again, like you said, so many things can bring it up. We used to play video games as children together, and I'll see a new video game that came out, and I'll be like, oh, John would love that. And then all of a sudden I'm back to thinking of those things again, and it's like, it's amazing sometimes the random things that can bring back those memories that are just completely unexpected. So my point is just that, everything you said absolutely strikes true with me in my experience. And
I'm mindful of a passage in Revelation, chapter 9, I believe, where John says, blessed are the dead who die in the Lord. And he mentions in that passage how their works do follow them. And it's amazing. That really is true.
Yeah.
When someone we love dies, if we just give it to God, let God handle it, trust in him, the good that is done by their life in the lives of family members or other people that we know, it's amazing. It really is amazing. That goes for me too, by the way. My works will follow after me. Mm-hmm. And if they're good works, I guess they'll follow. If they're bad, guess what?
Yeah.
So I got to be careful that I'm following Jesus Christ.
Absolutely.
One more thing real quickly.
Sure.
There was a story I read recently about a family dog that died. And not to make light of any human that dies, but the dog had been close to a child. And the child cries a lot, and the father says, don't feel bad. On Saturday, we'll get you a new dog. And you got to think, what is the father really saying? Don't feel bad. It's wrong to feel bad. It really is. That's what he's telling him. On Saturday, we'll buy you a new dog. What is he saying? Well, that dog is replaceable. It isn't. It isn't. If you lose something, you should replace it as soon as possible. And replacing the loss will make it easier. It's just like the young lady, and this really happened. Her husband died unexpectedly, and someone walked up to her, and she said, "It's okay. The grass is greener on the other side." And you wanted to knock that person for a loop. She was devastated. No, there's no way.
Mm-hmm.
No way you can do that. You don't replace it. You trust in the Lord. You pray. Lean on the everlasting arms of Jesus, but lean on each other in times of grief. That's where the power is, I think, so much of the time.
Definitely. And we all, I think, can be easily guilty of this, but you see someone hurting and you want to help them, but I know from experience that oftentimes the best thing to do is say nothing, because you think you're helping, but you have to remember from their perspective that, like you said, saying something like that might have had the best intentions, but it's not how you perceive it in that time of grief. So sometimes, I'm not saying you should never say anything, but, just be very careful. Be very careful what you say.
Sometimes the best thing is to say nothing.
Exactly. So,
sometimes just an arm on the shoulder is all they need.
Be there for them. Yep. Now, you did just make me think of another question.
Okay.
So we actually have had dogs our whole life, my wife and I, and we love dogs. They're parts of our family. We currently have a dog that's, let's just say, not going to be here very much longer. So that made me wonder, are there any ways that you might recommend? Obviously, there's prayer, but is there any way we could prepare for grief that's soon to come? Because, if this, we might have a day, we might have a year, I don't know, but it's going to happen.
And whether it's a pet mm-hmm. or it's a spouse, how many spouses do we know that their
Absolutely.
spouse is dying of cancer or dying of something else, and they know it's going to happen?
Mm-hmm.
I think one of the biggest things you do is you talk about it.
Yeah.
You don't hide the feelings. You don't try to shove them under the carpet or the rug.
Definitely.
You talk about it. Talk about it. Get it out in the open. Now, when you're talking to a pet, I don't know if they really understand, but you spend as many times, many days, as many moments as you can, precious moments with that animal.
Mm-hmm.
Same way with the human being. You just spend time with them. I do think that one of the problems we have is we ignore, and we try to hope by sweeping it under the rug and not talking about it, it'll go away. But it doesn't go away. It doesn't. It's going to happen for real.
Yeah.
I think besides prayer, that's probably the biggest thing you can do.
Definitely.
Talk to your spouse about it. Talk to your
Definitely.
friends about the dog.
Yep.
Show pictures, carry pictures around, and show it to people. That sounds kind of mean maybe in a way, but it's not. It's healthy.
Yeah.
It keeps it out in the open.
Definitely.
So powerful.
And above all, it may sound cheesy, but talk to God.
Talk to God.
Pray to God.
Prayer.
We have to remember that we have the most loving, caring Father that there ever could be. And He wants us to be happy. He wants us. It doesn't mean we always will be, but He wants us to have the best. He wants to care for us. He wants to love us. And we have to keep an open dialogue with Him, keep
That's
a relationship with Him, and trust in Him, and let Him help us get through things. Absolutely.
Prayer is not just for the good times. It's for the bad times.
Yeah.
It's for the tough times. And many times we do only pray when things are going bad.
It's a habit
Now's
we
the
have to try to
time
break.
to do it. Now's the time to do it.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
definitely.
Absolutely.
Well, are there any other closing thoughts that you might have? This has been a very interesting conversation to me.
It's a very interesting that too. It's a good conversation to have. There are just so many ways we can deal with this. I was thinking the other day about why we are crazy enough to believe in some of these myths that are out there about death and dying, about loss. And I was thinking that the mind only has access to what's been put into it.
Yeah.
It just kind of slapped me upside of the face. And the information stored in the mind is stored with importance attached.
Sure.
So it really depends. The mind job is to believe that whatever it has stored in it is always right. Sometimes we got to redo that a little bit, rework it, and it's okay to do that. Allow yourself to learn more and to be open-minded,
Adapt,
and to deal with it. Once again, I will just reiterate that if you've lost someone and you haven't found that person to talk to, besides prayer and trusting God, find somebody to talk to. Call me, call Sean, call somebody, and let's talk. Just talk.
definitely.
It's okay.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for coming here today and
Thank
having
you.
this conversation. And we are here in Abilene, Texas. Our congregation is Baker Heights Church of Christ, and we are at bakerheights.org. And we absolutely, sincerely mean that. We welcome everybody. We don't bite very hard, but we're a really friendly congregation, and we will absolutely want to have talks and conversations and help anyone that we can and get to know people and build relationships so that we can all move closer to God. So we thank you for watching this podcast, and check us out for our next podcast coming up soon. Have a nice day.